Everybody, and once again, welcome to Art 192. I just wanted to take a brief moment here on this video to talk a little bit about the nature of changing software and how Adobe approaches software at this point in time. So, as I record this, the most current version here in 2016 is Adobe Photoshop CC 2015. Now, of course, this will change. You might be using this 4 or 5 years from now, and who knows what they'll be calling it at that point. All I can tell you is that up until the around 2011, 2012, Adobe was calling everything CS1, CS2, CS3. They got up to, I believe, CS6 before they jumped over to the CC acronym, Creative Cloud, Adobe Creative Cloud. And they've used numbers, at least till this point in time, the year to be exact, to identify the different versions as opposed to just the sequential numbers they had used before. At any rate, obviously, software companies are in the business of selling you more software. And Adobe reached a point at which they realized that they didn't have a whole lot of new features to add for each version. So people had figured this out and they stopped buying and upgrading, what we call upgrading their software. So they were sticking with older versions of Photoshop and they worked just fine because the new features that Adobe was adding were really superfluous. They didn't add much. They weren't necessary in the least. So people figured this out. Adobe then figured out that people weren't upgrading and they realized, well, they weren't going to stay in business if they weren't selling upgrades. So they switched to what's now known as the Creative Cloud or the Creative Suite. And they are, of course, now selling it as a subscription service. And here's some of the options here at this point in time on their website, although these change all the time. And there's usually, at least at this point, a link for schools and universities for different versions and different money-saving features. At any rate, their goal is to emulate cell phone companies and to create something that requires you to stay locked in under a subscription basis. Now, there are some options, at least at this point in time, where you can opt out and just go month to month as opposed to signing up for a full year. But depending upon the specials that they offer for students and whatnot, you may choose to opt in for a whole year regardless. But I just want to let you know there's always options, at least at this point in time, in terms of what you can choose from. But the question I get most often is, how old a version of Photoshop can you use for this course? And the answer to that is you can actually go quite low. I would say into the lower CSs, maybe CS3. And you'll still find for the course because, like I said, Adobe really hasn't added significant features to this software for a long time. And most of everything that you'll need for contemporary photo design as well as web design or anything you're using Photoshop for is going to be fine with a older version of Photoshop. Now, that said, most people who go out and get Photoshop now, of course, are going to have a more current version than what I'm using right here with 2015. But this brings up the nature of changing software and the fact that software is never going to be stagnant. Adobe is always going to change the interface that you're using to justify their existence or what have you, but they're always going to keep changing around buttons and making things different just to try and keep you buying new versions. So rather than panicking when you see the buttons aren't exactly where they are when I do a tutorial or a lesson, just realize that the features are going to be there. It's just a question of finding them. And it's perfectly fine to email me and ask me where something is. That's what I'm here for. But you'll probably figure it out soon enough in terms of where things have moved around. It's usually doesn't take that much effort to find where the menus have changed and where they may be a little different. But if something is throwing you off and you just really don't aren't seeing anything like what I'm showing you on my lesson, just send me an email and we'll figure it out. I'm quite used to this, and I can point out usually quite quickly where differences may lie in the different software versions. I'll also just point out that in every version of Photoshop, you can always go to preferences and tweak certain things in the interface, whether it be the color theme or certain screen modes and things related to the look and the overall functionality of the workspace. So you have a lot of different options here that you can play with. At any rate, don't panic. That's the message here. Software changes, it's inevitable. The version that you learn on right now will not be the current version 2 or 3 years from now. That's just the nature of business. And the more things change, the more they stay the same, I guess is the message here. So just email me if you do have questions or have any doubts. And we'll see you on the next lesson.